Are you talking about coming back?
Yes,
I'm
yes.
I'm ready to come back.
Uh,
It's time.
you can get so much done on virtual.
Yeah, that is true. I agree.
We've done
But
very well on virtual. We've done very well.
we have, but it's still time.
You just want to drive downtown and go through the parking.
I know,
That's all.
especially with winter coming on in a few months. I know. I'll be kicking myself, but
Yeah, we're gonna turn our heads and look a mean stare at you.
I know that's okay. It's time. We got to get back. Everything else is open.
Just let me know when we're ready, Ashley. We,
Hey, Scott, we are ready.
okay, thank you. Okay. A call to order the Cuyahoga County Public Works Procurement and Contracting Committee meeting for Wednesday, June 30th, 2021. Could I have a roll call, please?
Calling the roll, Mr. Tillman,
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Conwell,
Present.
Ms. Baker,
Here,
Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
There is a quorum.
All right, thank you. Is there any public comment this morning?
No, Mr. Chair, no one submitted any public comment.
Okay, and if I could have approval of minutes from the June 2nd, 2021 meeting.
So moved, Sweeney.
second, Baker.
Yep. Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Sweeney and a second from Councilwoman Baker. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And Madam Clerk, if you could please read the first matter referred to committee this morning, or the only matter, legislatively at least.
Resolution number 2021-0158, authorizing the appropriation of real property for reconstruction and widening of Sprague Road from Webster Road to York Road in the cities of Middleburg Heights, Parma, North Royalton, and Strongsville.
Okay, and we have somebody from the administration to speak to this in Public Works this morning.
Yes, this is Jessica French from Department of Public Works.
Okay, Jessica, thanks for joining us. Just saying thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We have the appropriation of 20 parcels for the Sprague Road project, which will be beginning most likely in August of this year. The parcels in question, most of them are just non-responsive parcels. A couple of them, 3 of them do not want to give W-9s to the county. And that's the only way we're allowed to pay them. And then one asked for $2,600 for a $300 temporary easement. And, you know, obviously we cannot accept that counter offer.
And if you could just explain to maybe some of the folks who might not have been on committee, last time we did this, I recall doing this last year, how this process works and why we have to do this.
Yes, so we have for the last year and a half, we have worked to contact all the property owners, provide them with a offer based on a fair market value that's valued by an appraiser that we hired. I'm a consultant. And we go out to most of these are temporary easements. There's a couple of channel easements throughout and a couple of fee simple. But most on this Sprague Road project are temporary easements, basically to construct sidewalks and reconfigure their drives going to 3 lanes, 1 in each direction and a middle turning lane. And then, so to do all of that work, we have to obtain temporary easements. Most people, there were 150 parcels, over 150 parcels on this project. Most people signed, and we compensated them as a result of their signatures. With these last few, we can't seem to get them to sign. We've done both letters, certified letters, knocked on doors, but they will not, they've been unresponsive. And we, to ensure that the project moves forward, we have to file appropriation. At the time of filing, we are then able to begin the project.
Okay, thank you. Are there any
Mhm.
questions from my colleagues regarding this piece of legislation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Miller?
Through the chair, could you explain a little more about this no W-9 problem? I hadn't heard that before.
French.
So to process, oh,
Go ahead.
to process payments, we must both receive the either a temporary easement or a WD, just whatever the deed instrument is, as well as a W-9. The county requires a W-9 to pay, to ensure, one, that they're an individual that we are paying to pay the property owners. And without that, I'm not able to cut any checks.
And so they can't just use their social security number. It has to be like a business tax identification number. Is that correct?
Oh, no, they can use their social security number. The W-9 has a place, it can be either for a business or for an individual. No, they can use their social security number.
So it's just a form that has to be filled out. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And through the chair, is it necessary to complete the appropriation process before you begin construction, or does the appropriation process merely have to be approved and underway?
We just have to file. So that the actual cases themselves do not have to be complete. We don't have to come to a settlement in court at the time. We just have to actually file and provide the court with a deposit of the fair market value that you see in the resolution. Those values will be deposited with the court for each of those properties. And then we can continue on with the project.
And
That gives us the right.
And what is the total number of unresolved parcels compared to the total number of parcels?
20 parcels. There are over 150 parcels that we acquired. I think
So
153, 154. So between 5 and 10%.
well, if it's 20 out of 153, it's more than 10%.
173. I mean, with the 20 parcels plus we negotiated 153.
Okay, it's still a
Successfully.
little over 10%, which strikes me as a lot. It seems like that's more than typical. Is that correct?
It is more than typical. One of our biggest issues last year was, I mean, not to put blame on anything, but with COVID out, a lot of people did not want to meet with us in person. And so we did a lot of things by mail as a result. And I think it's just one of those things that when it's just kind of on the back burner, for, like we're not up in front of them speaking to them, then it's sometimes an issue trying to get them to send things back and follow up.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Any other questions? Ms. Conwell?
Through the chair to Ms. French, you stated the fair market value you would set aside with the court. At this time, can the individual homeowners or property owners go up in this negotiation? Or is that once we settle with the court and put the fair market value, is that kind of like an agreement, that's what it would be?
It can go up, and at that point, I would come back to the council to gain approval for any increase. The increase has to be fair market value. So if they feel like the fair market value is incorrect in these situations, then that's usually where the price, the value would go up. But until I file and hopefully if they have an attorney, then that's the case. Most of these I doubt will have an attorney. And many of them usually will just take the money out. If it was anything like Sprague 1, but I can't determine that right now.
Okay, and so how do they fight the fair market value? Do they get their own appraisal at their cost?
They can get their own appraisal. They can speak to probate about it. They can speak to our attorneys about it. If they provide any sort of justification, because we're required by law to pay the fair market value of the property, so if there's justification, which I hope they would have provided in the last year and a half to me, because then we could, it's just better than going through the courts. But then that, we would figure that out and come to a settlement within the court process.
One final question. Most of them say temporary easement, but there is one that says you're requiring a warranty deed and a temporary easement. That's new to me.
Mhm.
Can you explain that?
Yep. So the warranty deed it's actually near the corner area. So we have to acquire fee simple because of just where the sidewalk lays. We need just, and it's a very, very small amount. And then plus additional property to actually finish the project and build the project, but we don't need to keep any of that temporary area permanently. So they're both two separate areas. The warranty deed is a separate than the temporary easement, and the temporary is just because we don't need that in the future for maintenance or improvements.
But the warranty deed part, we will need to.
And that's where we buy it in fee simple. So we will own it, at the end of the day, or the county will own it at the end of the day, and it will be part of right away.
Are these normal things that have occurred before?
Yes, they have occurred before. Anytime we need property for a project, if just that area isn't wide enough, we do acquire warranty deeds, fee simple.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, no problem. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have
Let
a
me jump
question,
in.
Chair.
Okay, I heard Miss Baker and then Mr. Sweeney. Okay.
Thank you. I don't remember this last year, so I'm just going to ask a couple of questions for my own knowledge. Is there, except for the one that's 2,600 and it's only worth 300, is there anyone else in here that's disputing the price that you're offering, or is it just they're just non-responsive?
All of these have been non-responsive except for that one $2,600 counter offer. I do know 3 of them did change ownerships through this year and a half, but all 3 of those properties have had a new offer for at least 6 months, but non-responsive.
All right. And is the varying difference in price because they own more of the property? The one for $1,350 and the one for $4,000? Is that because there's more property there that you're needing to acquire?
So many of them it is because of more property, or some of them are because of more property, but most of them are because of improvements on the property. So if there's a tree, but even though we're just getting a temporary easement for most of them, if there's a tree that is near the edge of the property line, we know that when we put in the sidewalk within the right of way, tree roots don't care where the right of way line is. So we end up, severing those, and the tree could end up dying. As a result, we compensate the property owner for that tree because, we don't want to, it's a damage to them.
You, if I may, Chair, and you don't replant any trees that come down?
They are compensated to the whole reason to compensate them more is so that they can replant the tree, and probably a little farther back into their property.
Okay. I had another question, but it escaped me. Oh, the one that's a mailing address in New York. Is that also has for $4,000? That's also been an unresponsive?
Yes, and it's actually a residential, like I looked on Google Maps, it's a residential home. We've sent both certified mail to the Sprague Road address and as well to the New York address.
Okay, and I do remember my question. Does any of these temporary easements impact the quality of their property? Are they devalued at all?
No, because of because they're temporary, they're solely for putting in the sidewalk, putting in a new driveway for them. They're actually all of the property owners within Sprague Road, part of the driveway is being replaced as a result of this project. Because when you widen, we're widening and lowering a little bit, so we want to ensure that the slope of their driveways meets engineering guidelines. So they're actually, all of them are getting partially replaced driveways. And then the drive aprons, many of them are straight right now, and everyone cuts in the grass, but the engineers here change them to be angled the correct manner so that when they turn out, that they will just be on the driveway and not killing their grass. So many of them will have improvements on this as a result of this project.
So when you pay someone $300 for a fair market value, you're not only giving them $300, but you're also expanding the driveway, putting in sidewalks, things that are above and beyond that. So actually we're investing more in their property. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's fair to say. But just due to the Constitution, anytime we step on someone's property, we have to compensate them, for stepping onto their property. So the $300 is basically a rental rate for that little strip that we have to step on. It's not rental rate for the house or anything like that, just that little strip of property right beside the right-of-way line.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those answers. Good to know. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Baker. Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the early, when you started early and got me a little briefing beforehand. So thank you for the review. That caused my questions though. So, hello, Jessica French. How are you?
Hi.
Nice
Good,
meeting
thank
you.
you.
You get the bonus
Nice
of having
meeting you.
all council members ask you questions. You're the lucky day today. Just on the,
Well, I got answers, so that's good.
with the W-9, just for them to have to pay taxes, right? On the money?
Two reasons. I mean, they would have to go to an accountant about taxes. It's tricky in these situations. A lot of times they don't have to pay taxes on what they get for this rental. It just all kind of depends on their situation. But a lot of it, most of it has to do with the fact that we have to ensure that we're paying a human being or a entity or some sort of something, rather than, just to ensure that everything is correct and above board.
Thank you. And then if it goes to court and they raise it, does that affect any of the ones that you have already made deals with
No.
in regards to dollar amounts? A deal's a deal, and if that's a separate entity. And okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and appreciate your answers, Jess or Ms. French.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. Ms. French, I'm assuming this is something you want to get moving on as we're trying to get this project moving along. So second reading suspension, I would imagine, is what your request would be.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I will make that motion for second reading suspension on this R2021-0158. Do I have a second?
Second,
I
Miller.
have a second on R2021-0158. All those in favor of second reading suspension, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. All right, thank you, Ms. French.
Chair, may I ask just a quick question after the vote, just for my own?
Absolutely not. No, yes, Ms. Baker, no problem.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just real quick, I'm sorry.
No
Well,
problem.
These, once this is decided and you're moving forward, do these property owners get a letter explaining that this has happened, here's your check, and this is the work we're going to do and the time frame? Do they get an explanation, being they've been unresponsive?
Yes, so they've been receiving letters throughout this whole project. Even at the beginning, we give them the plans, we color in the plans to ensure that they know where their property is. And then we actually, before we even went to here today, I provided a letter saying that we were coming here and what the next steps would be. And then before we actually file, because I mean, if we come to an agreement, even though you have already, after you've approved this, it doesn't mean I have to file on that property owner. Like we can still keep going. I just need, the,
Yeah,
ability to, I guess. So we'll still continue to negotiate. We'll still continue to go out there and knock on their door and send them letters. This isn't the final. And then plus we'll have a public meeting of some sort for the actual project itself, just so the property owners will know what's going on when construction starts.
good. Thank you. I appreciate knowing that. Thank you, Chair, for indulging me.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Okay, thank you. And Madam Clerk, unless there's anything else from Ms. French, Madam Clerk, if we could, I believe we're having an update on the Cuyahoga County Energy Participation Program. We have Mr. Reimer here.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. Matthew Reimer with the Department of Public Works. Good morning, committee members. I also have with me Mr. Kirkland Mazurek. Mr. Kirkland Mazurek represents Palmer Energy, who is the the County Commissioners Association of Ohio Service Corporation Energy Manager. So Palmer Energy manages the energy program that we participate in through the CCAO. So Kirk is with me to answer any questions. And to the clerks, I'm going to share my screen and bring up my presentation. Bear with me one moment. Mr. Chair, I'm just going to get that in slideshow mode, hopefully. There we go. Mr. Chair, can you see my brief? Hopefully that's the case.
I see like your screen. It's not like the presentation just yet.
Interesting. Okay.
There we go.
How about now, sir? Okay, very good. Very good. Mr. Chair, committee members, this is briefing you out on the energy purchasing program updates. Specifically, this is the required briefing for a transaction that occurred in April with executed contracts delivered to us in early May for the electrical supply contracts for our 35 accounts that are within this program. So I'm going to go through just a brief overview since it's not often that we brief you on these transactions. As committee members may know from our efforts in the summer of 2019, we were before you with a new ordinance to establish a new energy participation program within Department of Public Works programs. That's now codified in Code 806-04D. And that allowed us to execute a participation agreement with the CCAO Service Corporation for participation in their electricity, natural gas supply programs, and solar programs. The first transaction that we used this program for was immediately after that ordinance was approved in the fall of 2019, and that was for our natural gas contracts, which run through the fall of 2022. And this was the second transaction made under this program this last May, where we brought on through a competitive RFP a new electric supplier for our 35 Cuyahoga County electric accounts that are in this program. So the accounts that are in this program, just for your visibility, are only those 35 accounts where First Energy is the utility. As many of you may know, the county also has a separate electric services agreement with Cleveland Public Power for certain downtown public buildings and facilities, and those are outside of this CCAO program and governed by that contract. So the actions that we have taken with this program for the electrical power supplies, back in December of 2020, the CCAO manager, who is represented by Mr. Mazurek from Palmer Energy, they issued the RFP for electric power supplies. And this was for not just our community, but for other various Ohio communities. And they included our 34 accounts of Cuyahoga County. In early February of this year, the CCAO manager submitted to us the preliminary RFP results and their recommendations. We had 9 responses to the RFP, and based on the rate supplies, the initial rate proposals from the suppliers, they recommended a short list for the refresh date of AEP Energy and Energy Harbor to be the suppliers for the refresh shortlist competition. They also recommended we keep our options open for an all-inclusive either 24 or 36-month term based on the market conditions that we would see at the time of the refresh. So Public Works, we reviewed those recommendations in depth with Palmer Energy. We also added one account to be considered for the refresh, and that was our Harvard Avenue Yard, which was not on currently on either of the contracts since our acquisition and renovation of the property. So that is now the 35th account added to the program. We briefed council staff and you, Mr. Chair, in April of this year, and then I followed my the guidance and submitted my required notice to council on behalf of the director before giving the CCO manager the approval to move forward with their recommendations. As a result, the CCO manager conducted the refresh for electric power supplies on April 19th, 2021. And this refresh was conducted, this is a rate refresh to determine who was going to be getting the contract. And that was with AEP Energy and Energy Harbor, the two shortlisted vendors. So what were the results? The results you can see in the table at the bottom of this slide. AEP Energy had the best competitive rate on the time of the refresh. Their rate represents a estimated annual savings against the current rate. We have a different supplier now. Our current supplier is Dynegy, or at least it was until the contract changed hands in May. So that 66,000 of annual savings is against the current rate that we were paying with the Dynegy supply contract. So they recommended at the time of the refresh, they being Palmer Energy, CCAO, a 24-month contract with AEP Energy, and that was returned to us fully executed on May 3rd. And the rate is just over 4 cents a kilowatt hour. We have roughly, it depends on how our usage is going to play out, but we have roughly 13 million kilowatt hours, 13 gigawatt hours in our account portfolio here that's represented. And so that's the rate that we're paying there. We also had during the refresh time period between when we provided the recommendations to council and conducted the refresh and sent the contracts for execution, Department of Law did review these contracts, redlined both shortlisted vendors, and AEP accepted the Department of Law red lines before the contracts were executed. Some of the major accounts that are on this particular program, as I mentioned, there are 35. We have the Harvard Yard in the picture in the upper right, the Cuyahoga County Animal Shelter, the picture to the left, and both the Hilton and the Cuyahoga County Huntington Convention Center are on this account. The remaining accounts are primarily sanitary sewer lift station and pump station accounts located throughout the county. So the next actions related to this program, just to keep you informed, since, as I said, the transactions are relatively few and infrequent, but there continues to be a dynamic market on natural gas supply, and the CCO manager is always looking for hedging opportunities for additional quantities to lock in best rates, as that market can be volatile and very dynamic, as I said. Our next new major supply contract that'll go out via RFP will be the natural gas supply contracts in the fall of 2022. And then since we have a 2-year term on the current contract that I'm briefing you out on, we'll have new electricity supply contracts in the spring of 2023. All this will be before we need to come back to you to renew the program, this participation agreement program, in August of 2024. As you may know, the code provision sets a 5-year program duration on the energy program. So we will be before you ahead of that time for either renewal or other recommendations with regard to our participation. So with that, myself and Mr. Mazurek stand ready to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reimer. Appreciate the presentation and also appreciate keeping us informed back in April. I think that was one of the first times I was back in the building. We met on this. Any questions from my colleagues on this?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions.
Okay, Mr. Miller?
The first question is when you said that AEP accepted the red lines, what did you mean by that? I was not familiar with that.
So, and Kirk, please correct me if I'm wrong, but as part of the shortlisting process and before going into the refresh, each of the providers, AEP Energy and Energy Harbor, provided draft contracts for review. And the Department of Law reviewed both of those contracts and provided red lines so that the contracts can be executed on the date of the refresh by the CCO Energy Manager. There were some provisions in the contract provided by both entities that needed to be edited by the Department of Law. Once the respective suppliers received those edits, they accepted them. At least AEP accepted them, and there was no then further dialogue before the contracts needed to be executed. Hope that answers your question, Councilman.
Yes, it does. And the second question is when you talk about hedging opportunities, does that mean that basically when prices are favorable that you purchase an option to buy an additional quantity at a certain price, and so that when it's contract time, if that option is attractive, you then exercise it. Is it something like that?
Kirk, could I kick that question to you, please, sir?
Sure, absolutely. So the CCO program is actually managed not only by us, but there is an energy committee at the County Commissioners Association. One of the members on that is actually one of your Cuyahoga County staff, Gerard Solomon. What happens is we come to recommendations at various times of the year. Let's purchase 10, 25%, 30% of the volumes of the overall group. There's 60 counties or so that are buying their natural gas for that in that process. And at that point, you're actually locking in those percentage volumes at an X price. And we do that to protect, because there's always, you don't want to go into a winter time without any volumes there, because you don't know where the pricing is going to go up. Historically, it goes up a little bit, and it protects the counties, and is shown over the course of this program to provide savings to all the counties based on those hedging parameters.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any other questions from colleagues?
Just one, if I may.
Okay, Ms. Baker?
Is there any engagement with the microgrid? Does that play a role at all in this, in these prices and how we're engaged?
No. Let me think about that, Councilwoman. I'm going to say no, but I will follow up with Director Foley to make sure that's the case. I don't believe the microgrid discussions will impact anything related to this program and this program's outlook, unless it takes load away from any of the accounts that are on this contract. There is a contract provision. Kirk, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a 10% of the capacity of the estimated usage add or drop without impacting the rate. So as long as we stay within the 10% of the total estimated usage, we'll be okay if there is some impact by any of the any exterior factors, such as any solar work. None is envisioned, but that would be an example. If solar takes something off of our usage profile, or we sell a building and that load comes off of our account listing, as long as we're within 10% of what we put in the RFP, our rate will still stay the same. And
secondary to that, Matt, every time we go out for bid, obviously, and Matt and his team keep us informed of what's happening with facility standpoint. So we know in advance. So if we know you're going to lose one or two of those facilities in the next agreement, we just don't RFP those agreements out. So we work hand in hand with your team to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Matt, if you could just double check with Director Foley, just so he's aware and make sure that there isn't any, because it is a new and up and coming endeavor that we're anticipating with the microgrid, if it does become a reality, and just what the impacts would be. But I appreciate that.
Will
Right.
do,
And I also-
Councilwoman.
Yeah, also,
Will do.
Councilwoman, I don't think the microgrid at this point has any plans to supply any county buildings. But
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think that there is, if there's an opportunity to save money, I think it would include county buildings, wouldn't it? I think we're probably the first in line, aren't we, Matt, or no?
So just as a follow-up and to try and answer your question, Councilwoman, I'm not sure that last question, just because I'm not involved directly into the microgrid program, but I do have a direct line of communication with Director Foley on this contract, and I keep him informed on how this program operates, and he knows that some of the decisions he may make will, and initiatives he sets out on, may impact our efforts on and result in actions from CCAO on how they characterize or compete the accounts. I think your question about the microgrid, at risk of being wrong, so I will confirm it, is I believe it'll have more bearing on the Cleveland Public Power contract, because that has most of the downtown facilities on its contract than it will impact this particular energy program. But that's a little bit of speculation on my part, and I'm going to follow up with Director Foley and get you a better answer.
Thank you. And I'm unsure too. My questions are just speculative too. I'm just asking the question.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
okay, thank you. And we can get clarification on some of these questions, Mr. Reimer, from Mr. Foley at some point, even if he provides us with an email response to some of Ms. Baker's inquiries and my inquiries. Okay.
Will do, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reimer, and continue to keep us posted. Done an excellent job of doing that, and we appreciate the continued dialogue. And with that, is there any, Mr. Sweeney, do you have something?
Just a bit of miscellaneous when you call it.
Okay. All right. When any miscellaneous business, Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my committee members, thank you first and foremost for passing the road project on Lake Avenue. But I want to keep you up to speed. There's a little bit of discussion from the residents in regards to the 10-foot sidewalk, working with the city, the county, and the metro parks. I'm gonna be actively involved with Jenny Spencer, the councilwoman. We have a meeting set up with Director Dever and Miss English, with Freddie Collier from the city and Director Spons from the city, just to try to work out the issues. You'll probably hear about it in the newspaper a little bit here and there, but I just want to keep my colleagues up to speed within the Public Works Committee, because I want to do that, because I'm thankful that you did it, and I want it as smooth as possible to show we're partners as we move forward, and don't want too much drama, because it's a big change for the residents having a 10-foot sidewalk in front of their house on Lake Avenue.
Sure. Appreciate that. And it sounds like you're on top of everything with respect to that ongoing matter. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything else miscellaneous for the committee? Okay, seeing none. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. And Public Works shall adjourn at 10:39 a.m. Next time we'll see you in person.
Yay.